Lost Lynn.
I call the regular board meeting to order. All members of the board are present. Mr. Manna, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss employment matters related to particular persons and collective negotiations? Ms. Blackinger, Dr. Singh, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. That makes me sad. May I have a motion to return the regular board meeting to public session? Ms. Buckinger, Mr. Manna, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Please be advised that in the event of a fire and emergency and an evacuation should be necessary, an alarm will sound. Please know all marked emergency exits and evacuate well away from the building. At this time, we request that everyone turn their cell phones and other electronic devices to silent. Thank you. At this time, we would like to honor former President Jimmy Carter and two of our staff members, Marie Adornado Alcaraz, a teacher aide at East High School who passed away on December 9th, and Lori Caccianetti, executive assistant to the superintendent, who passed away on December 31st. We offer our condolences to their families, friends, and colleagues, including those sitting here tonight. I ask that all in attendance please join us in a moment of silence for President Carter, Ms. Adornado Alcaraz, and Ms. Caccianetti. Thank you. Item number 3, we have recognition. Dr. Brown Hall. Should we go ahead and move forward with their school spotlight for Heim Middle School? There's someone here from Heim here to speak. Thank you. Step on up. Thank you. Sure. Tonight, we begin our recognition with Heim Middle School. Heim Gives Back is an annual event allowing students to create and send thank you cards, care packages, and donation to those in need right in our community. They also send care packages to first responders and members of the military. Please welcome Adam Buffamonte, principal at Heim Middle, to share more information.
Good evening, Dr. Brown Hall. Good evening, Dr. Brown Hall, board officials and Board of Education and Williamsville community. We appreciate you having the Heim community and myself come today to talk about Heim Cares and what we do with that initiative. Heim is a school that is meant for building meaningful, strong relationships, not only with students, but also with the community members. And I have two of our teacher leaders that are going to be able to explain a little bit more about the process of Heim Cares and what we do with that initiative. So I'd like Morgan Altieri to come along with Jen Moore.
Good evening. Well, we can share a little bit about what Heim Gives Back is. It's been going on for 8 years now. It was really driven by our wellness asset survey with the 40 developmental assets, seeing that students really needed that to be used as service, as members of the community. They need to learn what's important as far as, in their personal lives, but also giving back to those around them. And with their busy lives of families and themselves, sometimes they don't get that opportunity as much. So we really have it so it's built in to their school day. So in December, every year for the past 8 years, we've taken a day in the morning, about an hour of their Heim time, and teachers and students come up with a community service project. Each Heim time, so each homeroom, there's about 40 of them or so, chooses a different activity of what they want to do. So it's really student driven. The students come up with the ideas of who they want their craft to go to, what craft it is that they want to make, and then it goes out into the community. This year, we had a student who had an uncle that was in a memory care facility in the village of Williamsville. So he's like, can we give some of our things to that senior home? And sure enough, we did that. So every year, it's something different. So if Morgan will talk a little bit about where we
Sure.
went this year.
So this year we took a lot of things to different nursing homes in the area, and we also shipped some things overseas. We have a teacher at our school whose niece is deployed, and so we sent some things over there. And it was really cool for the kids to see that it was people that we knew that the items were going to, not just, random nursing home. It was nice to see that it was going to someone's uncle or someone's niece. So that was really nice for them.
A big community that we've kind of serviced in the last couple of years has really been the VA hospital. We started going there a few years ago, and the reception that we received from the members of the VA that worked there, but also the patients in and out, was beyond anything that we've ever seen before. So, and that was something, the smiles and the kids really, we went back and we talked to the students, like, this went to this person, and we actually got to see where some of the actual crafts that they needed went. And that's really important to them too. So it's been a really great experience for the last 8 years, and the kids get excited about it every year. They ask when it's going to be. So it's something definitely that makes Heim even more of a family than we already think we are. And it kind of shares our family with the outside community as well.
Awesome.
So
Very nice.
So here's our video.
Heim Gives Back is a day where students take time during Heim Time, and each Heim Time will come up with their own community service project. Those community service projects can go to local nursing homes, police and fire, Veterans Association, Meals on Wheels, and all of them are delivered the week before winter break to brighten everybody's day and give back to the community around us.
We are going to make a blanket. This year we're giving them to Meals on Wheels.
The purpose is to show kids that their community is really important outside of the school, and that it's so important that with everything that's going on around us, that you not forget to give to others and to really brighten someone's day, bring a positive attitude. That's really important when you're trying to build good character in students and in children, is teaching them the value of being kind to others and feeling compassion and giving back.
I'm just going to put a little snip. Perfect.
We're giving back to the community with projects that we're making. It just kind of makes your day brighter, because then, like, when you give, you don't necessarily need something back. It just helps you, like, see the world in a different perspective.
We take our time to work on these different projects so that we can thank our community. I think it's really cool how we do this. I really like it. It just makes my day better, because I know that somebody else's day has become better and their spirit might have been lifted.
This homeroom is making Lucky Buffaloes for a teacher's niece who is deployed, and these Lucky Buffaloes are going to be for her and her unit.
At Heim Middle, we not only focus on academics, but focus on making kind citizens, people who are going to give back to their community later in life. And this is just one way that we as a school work really hard to make sure that kids are seeing that there are places that you can give your time and your effort and your skills to help to make somebody's day brighter. And they got to create their own project. It was all student generated and what they wanted to do. So they took a lot of ownership in that.
What'd you make?
Candy.
I like it.
We're so proud of them. They work so hard. And when you walk the hallways during Heim Gives Back, you see everybody's working and they're doing something to help and to make it a better experience for everyone around them.
It really brings joy and happiness. When I give back to the community, it really brightens my day, and it brings a smile to my face and the people around me. Yeah, I'm proud of my school a lot.
Heim Middle is a family, both in our building and in the surrounding areas. And this activity speaks to a Heim Middle family. I'm so proud of them and how excited they get to do it. And it's one of the great things about working with students, especially in middle school, is that you can really motivate them, and that motivation in middle school can carry them into adulthood.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Well, Buffamonte, Ms. Moore, Ms. Altieri, thank you very much. We appreciate that. So our next recognition takes us to Mill Middle School. Collaboration is key to any project, especially one that includes nearly 100 students, hundreds of lines, music notes, and dance moves. Seussical the Musical was an absolute hit and would not have been possible without strong administrative support, incredible dedication by our teachers, and hard work of our students. Please welcome Principal Chris McDuffie. He's principal of Mill Middle School to share more with our teachers. I love the shirts. Come on up.
Thank you for that, Dr. Brown Hall, and good evening, leadership team and Board of Education. I'd like to just start by saying how truly proud I am of our drama club director, drama club advisors, and also our students who took part in this year's Seussical Junior. I think sometimes we see the finished product and we really don't realize or appreciate how much hard work, effort, time commitment truly goes into, the successful production of a school musical. And as you mentioned, Dr. Brown Hall, when we think about the idea of close to 100 cast and crew members, that is something that's truly remarkable and something certainly that we want to, not only recognize, but certainly celebrate. So as you mentioned, we do have 3 out of our 4 drama club advisors here. So I'm going to pass it over to them to let them speak a little bit more about Seussical Junior in depth. We have Mrs. Melissa Powers, Mrs. Jennifer Olson, and Mrs. Tennille Trenchard with us. Unfortunately, Mr. Matt Tishy, who's also one of our drama club advisors, could not be here with us, but we certainly want to recognize him as well. And with that said, I'm going to pass it over.
Awesome.
Hi, everybody. We would like to start by thanking all of you, the Board of Education and the Williamsville Central School District, for allowing our students to participate in Drama Club this year. This year, our students performed Seussical Junior, and it was a total hit. We are so proud of them. Approximately more than 85-ish students participated, and that included stage crew, it included student directors, and of course, our performers. It takes a team to create magic on stage, and we could not be more proud of each and every one of them. So I'd like to pass it to Mrs. Trenchard.
Good evening. Again, thank you for having us. So I guess we have 2 of these. Drama Club, as we know, is a place where students get to showcase their talent. They get to build confidence. They get to make new friends. It's just a place where we all have so much fun together. We are looking forward to taking all of these students with us in the spring, in June, to get to perform again at Shea 710 Theater. And they get to come together with other area schools for a day of the Junior Theater Celebration. And they're going to be with a whole bunch of other kids their age, where they're going to get to perform again a song from Seussical Junior. And during the day, they're going to take workshops and learn some more singing, acting, and dancing techniques to further their talents. So we're really looking forward to them. And Mrs. Olson?
Hi, everyone. I think one of the neatest things about doing this in middle school is the lessons that you watch kids learn throughout the show. As we know, middle school is a time of growth and development for students to figure out their passions and interests. Seussical Junior is such a beautiful journey of discovery, optimism, and acceptance. What some of the characters have to go through can be directly applied to real life. And as Oscar Lamb, who is our Horton, the lead elephant, says, Drama Club is my home. It's so important to offer so many opportunities to students at this age to feel successful and accepted.
Lastly, we would like to thank our administration, our colleagues, and our wonderful Drama Club parents. Thank you so much for all your support this season. But most importantly, we need to thank our students. Their talent on stage has been an inspiration, not only to many students watching them, but also to their directors. Thank you again, and we can't wait for many more musicals at Mill Middle School. Thank you.
Seussical Junior is filled with many characters that we have seen through Dr. Seuss's books. It's a lot of lessons about being yourself and to listen to your heart.
A person, no matter how small.
We have close to 90 total students involved in stage crew and in the cast. This is a team, and it takes so many parts to tell a story, because that's really what a musical does. And in order for that story to be successful, We have to work together.
Not a person seems to know, not a person seems to care. There is no one who believes a thing I say.
With musicals, I gain new family members. Like, it's just a beautiful experience because of Drama Club, where everyone just gets to have fun and get to work together. I would say quite a few of my friends are now in different grades than I.
The big playing pool in the jungle now.
I love having the opportunity to do the things I love and just be with great people. I've learned so many new things to help me with my singing and my acting. I was really shy before I've started any musical things, and I was so scared to perform for the first time, but gradually I've gained so much more confidence about myself when I go on stage. I'm not as nervous anymore.
Tell yourself how lucky you are.
Most people don't know how much work goes in behind the stage. We have over 30 songs that they have to do. They have to learn all the choreography, all of the lyrics. We have people backstage. We have people doing music, lighting. We have people even doing projectors. I love doing this, and I love helping out and seeing how when I help out the product that comes out. I'm really proud of myself that I've gotten to this level that I'm able to be trusted by all these adults, and I'm able to put as much effort as I can.
Anything's possible.
There's so many invaluable skills that musical theater lends a hand to. Self-confidence, empathy, creative thinking, critical thinking. All of these skills develop as they get older, and it preps them for high school. Now we're hearing from our high school colleagues saying, wow, you guys have done amazing things there at the middle school, and you really prepared them. There's nothing more we love than to watch these students get up on stage.
What do you think about Sue? What do you think about Sue?
The fact that we were able to put on 3 magnificent shows is just incredible. I just really, really feel blessed that I've been given this opportunity to channel this energy, to tell this story to the audience. I love taking part in musicals. Drama Club is my home.
Awesome. Very much. I turn it back over to you, Board President.
Thank you. Are there any board acknowledgements this evening? Dr. Spicer.
I just want to add on to recognizing the musical, not only the great performance, but the fact that we had a snow day, and whatever happened behind the scenes went very smoothly as a parent, where they very easily pivoted their schedule so they still had 3 shows. So I very much appreciated that.
Thank you, Dr. Spicer. Anyone else? Okay, we'll be moving on to item 4A, public expression. I now call on Parliamentarian Bleckinger to review our public expression format.
Thank you. Welcome to all who have come to observe this regular board meeting. Per policy 1510, the board allows for up to 30 minutes of public comment, a time when we invite members of our school community to share ideas, opinions, and concerns with us. While we are here to listen carefully, we take your concerns seriously. Public comment is not designed to be a discussion. Therefore, please do not expect us to respond tonight. Instead, you will receive a response by email after our meeting. Because we want to maintain mutual respect and civility, please ensure that comments are delivered in a respectful manner to the board directly. Also, under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments related to employee personnel information or any topic that may disclose information about a particular student. On these matters, we ask that you go through the appropriate administrative channels. Please note that individuals are required to sign up prior to our meeting, and each speaker is allotted 3 minutes for comments. You will be signaled at 2.5 minutes so that you may conclude your remarks. At this time, we will begin our public comments. After I call on you, please step up to the podium and state your name. I have Damon Piatek.
Hello, Damon Piatek. I just came here to talk about the lack of use of textbooks in math classes and science classes throughout the district. I have 2 daughters in the district, and this has been something that I have talked to teachers and the curriculum specialist about in the past. really the packets that we get, I brought my daughter's packets, they're missing thorough instructions. They're also missing a glossary, an index. It makes it very difficult to help your child study for a test or pick up curriculum if they've missed it for a illness or a scheduled music lesson. So it's very difficult to find terminology in here because of that. So if I'm looking for, let's say, domain, because I haven't done it in years, there's no index. I can't look it up. It takes us hours to help them study, especially for a midterm. You know, grasping concepts is very difficult for students sometimes, and we're told to use Khan Academy or the internet. We don't have any solid reference material to use, which there's not always the reference material on Khan Academy or the internet, and you can't always trust everything on the internet. And frankly, if I'm going to use Khan Academy, why am I sending my daughters here for educational instruction? And why wouldn't we want access to a more thorough explanation and additional problems? The packets also require students to be extremely organized, which they're not given those skills. They're not taught those skills in math class, how to organize this. They're not told how to organize this. And, you know, I believe the district is relying on students to look for outside help as far as where we go to seek help. So I've hired tutors. I've gone to online resources, which are very difficult, and really wanted to bring this to the attention because, like I said, I've already spoken to the teachers. I've already spoken to the math curriculum specialist, but I don't seem to be getting anywhere. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Saqib Ahmed.
Close enough. So, hi, my name is Saqib Ahmed. I'm a professor at Buff State. My area is physics and engineering, so I might appear a little cuckoo, but pardon me. I just put on some points, just not to stray off course. So the context of discussion is the opportunity for Muslim students to offer one of the 5 obligatory prayers during school time. This is particular for shortened days, which are November to March. During other times of the year, the day is long enough for the students to offer this midday prayer upon coming home and prior to the start of the next prayer timing. But from November to March, which is the daylight savings particular period, there's no way students can avail this midday prayer other than offering it during an opportune time during school hours. The actual prayer takes 3 to 5 minutes, and this has been something that Muslim students have had no issues in observing during school time by taking a permission slip from the teacher, for example, prior to this 2024 or 2025 academic year. But since the beginning of the said year, this time taken out for prayers has been prohibited with the enaction of a New York State law that has strict guidelines against non-instruction time being granted to students. So, lay of the land done. Given the short preview, a few comments moving forward. First of all, the first one, the obvious, that since November daylight savings time kicked in, our district has had scores of students who cannot offer this particular prayer. I know that multiple families have gotten in touch with teachers, guidance counselors, principals, a few board members, and the superintendent, and I realize that this matter is not new to many of you. Secondly, as many of you know, my family and a few other families over the years have been, quote unquote, a conduit or interface between the rapidly growing Muslim community and the district. I can tell you that there's a strong feeling of confusion, disenfranchisement, frustration, to name a few things, that Muslim kids and their families have been feeling since the past November. We, myself and these few other Muslim interface parents, if you like to call them, have done some due diligence in the meantime to better educate ourselves. We have met /emailed/ been on calls with multiple individuals for the past few weeks, other New York State district personnel from New York City all the way through here to understand how they are managing this situation, as well as many individuals from our own district, multiple middle / high school principals, teachers, guidance counselors, etc. The few highlights from these meetings have shown to us that other school districts have certain methods / models in place that ensure that Muslim students do get their 3 to 5 minutes to offer their midday prayer. B, this sentiment of students to be allowed to pray has been resonated by 100% of our very own teachers, principals, guidance counselors that we have met, who have suggested models/methods/ways of to manage the situation and have elegant solution pathways that ensure adherence to the New York State law and at the same time ensure that this core religious practice of prayer is not compromised. Lastly, I'll leave you with this last note. I realize that you are taking care of multiple kinetics, including new school hours for high and middle schools. And I ask that that as you settle on these issues, kindly involve these Muslim interface parents in your discussions, be it through the DEI committee or any other format that you deem feasible. Not only can we offer the proper context and perspective, but we can also offer granular insight, which might be a game changer.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed.
Oh, that's it? Okay, cool. Thank you for your time.
Moving on to item 4B, Dr. Brown Hall and Mr. Kelly, I turn it over to you for the budget development presentation.
Thank you very much. This presentation is really focused on repair reserves. And so I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Kelly to discuss the projects that we are proposing for this summer 2025 usage of reserve repair funds totaling no more than $950,000.
So for those that have followed the way Williamsville works every year, this is a recurring item that we see every year. And these particular items are repairs and replacements of different facilities and components that make up our buildings across the district. Typically, these would be done as capital projects, but in this situation, these are smaller in nature and they don't warrant being a capital project where we might have to borrow and get SED approval. So these are smaller in nature and they allow our facilities and our buildings to stay operational for years to come after they're completed. So this year we went through a process of evaluating our buildings and our facilities across our school district, and we came up with a list of projects, and hopefully we can bring them up here. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the budget presentation, but I think we might have taken these out of order today.
We did, and that is my fault because the board president gave me the proper segue into budget development and I jumped into repair reserve. So we're going to get this together. We're going to stick a pin in what Mr. Kelly just said, and we're going to hold that in our memory until we get to item 5A, and we're going to backtrack to the budget development process that was on the screen up there. All right. So we're going to get it together this evening, I promise. So Mr. Filipowski, if you would please put up the budget development process. We're going to stick a pin in what Mr. Kelly was saying about the repair reserve, and it doesn't total more than $950,000. We'll remember that. And then we'll move forward with the program continuation and budget development. Assistant Superintendent Kelly, please take it away.
Thanks so much. Similar to what I was saying a moment ago, this is also an annual process that we do every year. And this really kicks off our budget development process in earnest. You'll remember going back several months ago, we approved and adopted the budget calendar for the year. And as part of that process, the first step at this January meeting is actually taking a look at our current programming and what it would take to continue that programming going forward. And this second slide here really takes a look at that and delves into it for us so we can get a sense of what our upcoming budget is going to look like. So when we take a look at this slide on the left-hand side, we start off with our current budget. So you'll see the amount, the 232, 740, 574 million. That's what our current budget totals this year. And if we go down this side of the presentation, you'll see the employee salaries, Social Security and FICA increases, health insurance, BOCES, bus transportation, and cybersecurity. These are the areas that we've identified at the beginning of our budget development process where we will see significant cost increases. And in order to continue doing the programming at the current level, these are the areas that we see significant increases going forward for next year's budget that will allow us to continue to deliver the same programming that we are currently doing at the district. So the first area, our salary increases total a little over $6 million. Next up, we have our Social Security increases or FICA increases. We're at about $384,000. Next up is health insurance. Again, these costs are largely out of our control and inflation driven. This year, we're looking at about a 10% increase for health insurance for the district. Next up, we have our BOCES increases. Again, a lot of these services are contracted. We continue to look at our services from BOCES every year. We evaluate it. We decide if we want to continue doing the same services, if we want to add services, or if we're just going to keep the same services that we have. Right now, at this early stage of the budget development process, we're looking at an increase of north of $650,000 for BOCES. Bus transportation, as most people are aware, we contract out 100% of our busing for the district with a company called Student Transportation of America, known as STA. Every year they have an increase. We're looking at a few things that might also add on to their percentage increases this year, and one of those will be talked about a little bit further along in tonight's presentation. We talk about school start times. But at this point in time, we're looking at an increase of about 1.7 million for transportation. And for cybersecurity, typically we see an increase. The current year, we saw an increase of a few $100,000. Right now, we're looking into that. And if there is going to be an increase for our cybersecurity program, that's going to be to be determined over the course of the rest of the budget process. But the real important number I really want everybody to focus on, the increase in that line down at the bottom, the total required expense increases total about $11.3 million to continue our programming as we're currently operating this year. When we add that to our current budget, we get an initial budget total of $244 million. This is the number that, we have sort of developed at this initial stage and what we think the budget will be close to. Now, I want to point out to everybody that there's a good chance this number will change. It could go up or down a little bit. And there's a number of factors that could drive that, including the number of retirements we see in the district for teachers and other personnel. When we compare this increase, the $11 million increase to the current year budget, it's about a 4.8, almost a 4.9% increase. By way of comparison, last year, the budget for the current year increased about 4.2%. So that gives you an idea of what the budget costs are going to total for the upcoming budget year, the 2025-26 fiscal year or school year. Now, on the right side, we've projected out our costs for the year after next year. So these would be the costs for the 26-27 school year. And again, most of these categories continue year over year, and a lot of them are contractual in nature, including the employee salaries. As we know, we're going into contract negotiations with our teachers this year, and those are getting underway. And we anticipate some contractual cost increases with them over the length of that contract term. So you'll see an increase of about 4.2, almost 4.3 million we're projecting for the year after next. You'll see a corresponding increase for the Social Security or FICA increases. Again, health insurance. These are estimates and guesses, but we're also projecting about a 10% increase the year after next. We see a BOCES increase. We had a presentation at the last board meeting where some folks from BOCES came and spoke to us about adding a new building and that there would be additional costs for the district. You're seeing some of those costs in the proposed budget for next year and in the subsequent budget for the year after that. Again, bus transportation, we're looking at about a 6.5% increase. That's totaling north of $600,000. We'd be looking at close to an $8 million increase projecting out for 26, 27. And again, if we look at the total, that would be almost a $252 million budget for the 26, 27 fiscal year. And then again, the percentage increase, that would be about a 3.25% increase if we project out for the year after next. If there's no questions on this slide, I'll just go to the next slide, and I can also entertain questions on this next slide or after this slide. Okay. So if we take a look at this next slide, really these are just some overall themes as we go into the budget process. Again, our working budget, we have that total of $244 million. This is our initial projection of what we think our expenses will be for the upcoming fiscal year and school year. That's an increase of 4.88%. Again, our retirements are not finalized, and those numbers could, swing that number a little bit. It could come down if we see more retirements, or, we could see it increase also if there's less retirements. Again, the BOCES budget will not be finalized until March, so we could see some changes in that initial projection that we presented tonight. One of the big unknowns with the budget are the revenue estimates expected with the governor's budget proposal. That should be coming out this month, and we should get a better idea of what our revenue will look like for the upcoming fiscal year and school year. How does the governor's proposal change the foundation aid formula? And that's really what I was just talking about. We know that the study that was commissioned by the Rockefeller Institute suggested some potentially big changes from what we've been used to for the foundation aid formula. If the governor is going to take those recommendations and implement them, we should find out more this month. Once we get that, we'll start working on the tax cap calculation, and we should have revenue estimates at the February meeting for the board and the community at that time.
Thank you very much, Assistant Superintendent Kelly. Are there any questions before I turn it back over to our board president? I turn it back over to you, board president.
I don't know why we bother, because I'm turning it back over to you for the proposed summer repair reserved projects.
Absolutely. So we're going to pick up very similar to what Angelica said in Hamilton on the song Satisfied. We're going to rewind. So we're going to rewind and take it from where Mr. Kelly picked up when he was describing the repair reserves and the projects for summer 2025.
Great. Thanks so much. So, we were sort of unpacking this, and then we shifted gears, and now we're taking a look back at this. But these repair requests, we're requesting funding totaling no more than $950,000, and we think this is a fair estimate of the repair and replacements that we would need across the district in order to keep our facilities running and operating at an optimal level. Some of the repairs and replacements include repairing and restriping athletic tracks and crawl space abatement work at South High School, fixing cracks and repairing tennis courts at East High School. Transit Middle School, we're going to repair or replace the generator as needed as we look at that and determine how much more useful life is needed or is left with that particular generator. At Casey Middle School, we're going to be replacing some folding doors. At Forest Elementary School, we're doing some paint and aesthetic work above the windows. If you're familiar with that building, if you drive by it, you see there's sort of a greenish hue above some of the windows. And we took a look at that in working with Principal Wing over at the school. We explored some ways to enhance the look of the building and to, paint that and make the energy panels look a little better for the community around there. We've had some comments from some folks that live in that area, and we think we have a real good solution for that building to address those needs. Over at Lawrence Bell, this is where our facilities department operates out of, as well as our food service operations. We're going to be doing parking lot resurfacing. Again, when we look at these projects, a lot of times, because of how technical they are, we do have some associated architectural work and engineering work that goes into these projects. Again, we don't anticipate that costing the district any more than $40,000. A little later this year, we'll look at our repair reserves and if we need to add money to that repair reserve account. But right now, we have a healthy 4.8, almost $4.9 million in that account. And these $950,000 would come out of that funding that we have set aside for these repair reserves. I would be more than willing to entertain any questions or comments folks might have on these particular projects.
Thank you very much, Assistant Superintendent Kelly. Now I will turn it back over to our board president.
Thank you. We will now have our public hearing for the proposed repair reserve projects only. Anyone wishing to address the board regarding the proposals may approach the podium and sign in to speak at this time. Seeing no one approaching the podium, I did want to make note that the approval of the repair reserve projects is in agenda item 13A, which will be later this evening. Now we're moving on to 6A and 6B. Dr. Brown Hall, I turn it back over to you for your superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. And I will get through the community update. We only have a few slides because I know many of the individuals who are watching and many of the individuals who are here with us are excited about our school start time presentation. So I'll do the community update first. I want to remind families and students that on Monday, January 20th, we will have no school in observance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And new this school year, we remember last year, the governor signed into legislation that Asian Lunar New Year will also be a statewide school holiday. And that will be noticed on January 29th, the last Wednesday of the month. So Wednesday, January 29th, there will be no school for students also. Kindergarten. So if you have little ones at home or your neighbors have little ones or family members, registration will open in March for the 2025-2026 school year. So please complete the district census. That website is available here for you to complete. And for any questions, please contact Jennifer Lavery, who is our district registrar, by calling 716-626-8001. We are very fortunate this year that we were able to exhaust our waiting list for UPK because of the partnership that we have. And we know that that prepares our students to enter kindergarten very ready for their academic career here in Williamsville. So again, registration for kindergarten will open in March for the 2025-2026 school year. We wanted to list our January Regents exams so that families have a list of the exams, what dates they're offered, and at what times. We know that our schools will also be sending out communication to our families, but we wanted to list that here. And so that will begin the day after we observe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Computer-based testing. So this year, all of our grades 3 through 8 students will be participating in computer-based testing in the spring of 2025. Parents will still have the opportunity to determine their child's participation in the 3 to 8 New York State spring testing. While testing does not begin until April, our students will have an opportunity, it says in January, but it will be on January 23rd, to be engaged in a brief technology systems check. So anticipated spring testing dates will be shared by the elementary and middle schools very shortly. Our speaker series is continuing in partnership with the PTSA Council. We will have our next superintendent speaker series on Tuesday, January 21st. It will be on ELA and literacy, and our director, Christy Carroll, will be presenting. On Thursday, February 27th, Director Kevin Lasky will be presenting science, technology, engineering, and math. And then on Tuesday, March 18th, our Director of Mathematics and Computer Science, Dr. Chris McGinley, will be presenting. And we have archived the presentation by Director Jamie Pitnell on the ARCs. So all of the speaker series are virtual, and they will all be recorded and housed on our district website so that you can see at your leisure in the future. Our lost and found. So our transportation department asked that we please plead with our parents and families to visit our lost and found. It will be cleared out on this Friday, January 17th. Unclaimed items will be donated. So please stop by 533 Mill Street between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. or give a call at 716-626-8397. There are many items there. We know our students leave many items on the bus. Many of them are high-priced items that they may not have told you about as a parent. So I encourage, if there's something you haven't seen your child with, it's possible it's at the Lost and Found. So take a stop by there. And that is our community update. So thank you for the opportunity. Are there any questions about the community update? I didn't think so. So the star of the evening, we want to welcome our school start time members of our school start time committee to come up and present the proposal for a change of school start time for the 2025-2026 school year. I want to welcome the chair of the committee, Principal Keith Boardman, the principal of South High School. We have Principal Dan Wall, the principal of Transit Middle School. We have Director Christine Harding, who is our district medical director, and we have Director Chris Muchika, who is our director of athletics and physical education for our district. We also have a member of the committee in the back, Dr. Chris McGinley, who is here to support his colleagues this evening. I turn it over to Principal Keith Boardman.
Yes, thank you for having us here tonight, even though Mr. Muchika is hiding behind the pillar over here. But yes, we're ready to present. This has been a fairly long process, and I'll go through the timeline when he pulls up when the presentation is pulled up. But it's been about a 1.5 year process for us, and we're happy to present it tonight finally. So going through.
You want to use this one? Here you go.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Turn the volume up.
Okay.
Now I've got two, so I'm just going to flip back and forth. There we go. So the timeline for this, actually, we began about a 1.5 years ago. We actually began talking about it in the summer of 2023. In the fall of 2023 is when we began to put the committee together and really began to pull up a lot of the research that was out there on the material. I want to make sure we recognize the people on the committee. There were 15 of us total on the committee. So there were 6 administrators, 2 from each level, 6 teachers, 2 from each level. Plus we had 3 district office administrators, including Chris Muchika and Christine Harding and Dr. McGinley, all of whom we sort of felt brought a unique perspective. We certainly knew that if we were talking about school start times and end times, we needed to have our athletic director on there, and Christine was able to provide us a lot of information and interpret some of the information, the research out there about mental and physical health. So it's been a nice process. Anytime you have a committee like this, it's always kind of an interesting thing because you're digging into a topic that is probably going to make some people happy, make some people unhappy. Anytime change comes, that's something. One of the things I appreciate about all these members of the committee, we began the process by really saying, okay, our job here is to put our personal feelings aside. And that's difficult when you're talking about this because as we're going through and talking about school start times and school end times and those are things that have direct effects on us. And so I really appreciated the people on the committee who were willing to kind of put those personal thoughts and those personal feelings aside and really look at the research. And that is really what has driven this process, is examining the research and ultimately trying to find, first whether a change should be recommended, and then ultimately when we did determine that, really making sure that we're putting students first here and what is best for students. And so I appreciate that a lot. As we went through the fall and winter last year, we were meeting, we were looking at the research and really looking at a lot of different pieces of that. In the summer, we began the process of creating focus groups. We also, this past fall, there were 6 of us who actually attended the National School Start Time Conference in Baltimore. And then finally going through meeting with different focus groups. So we had multiple focus groups as we went through. We had 2 parent focus groups, a teacher focus group, and a student focus group. And many of the members of the committee actually attended those and were there to hear what each of those groups said. And then finally going through completing our final proposal, which is really a kind of a two-part structure. Once you've looked at the research for this and you've determined, okay, this is what we want to do, then you begin coming up with, okay, here are some of our parameters that we're really interested in, what the research is telling us we should be looking at, what we want to make sure that we are following. And then you actually get into the next step, which is, okay, but can that be done and how can it be done? And you start really looking at the logistics of those issues. And so this is really a multi-step. And even through, the last few weeks, we've been really examining, breaking down issues, trying to find those things where this is how to do it the best possible way to make sure that we're meeting all the needs for what we want to do. Obviously, the January was the proposal with the idea of on the timeline, Board of Education vote, and then a lot of information, and that's been something we've been working very carefully with Nick Filipowski, and I want to thank him for all the time he's put into this. Obviously, there was information that we're now presenting now. There is a lot of information that'll be coming out tomorrow for people, and then ultimately, if this is approved, the communication with everybody in the community as we move on.
Well, thank you everybody for having us tonight. We really appreciate this opportunity. Reviewing the research. So let's take a look at the research to better understand the evidence and recommendations that exist to best support our students. Mine works, unlike yours, Keith. All right, reviewing the research, student health and wellness. Based on the scientific evidence, the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, and American Academy of Sleep Medicine all endorse a school start time of 8:30 a.m. or later for our secondary students. As you can see, there's a plethora of organizations supporting later start times for our adolescent students. Listed are 8 that were reviewed supporting this recommendation. Such as American Medical Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Sleep Medicine, American Psychological Association, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, Centers for Disease Control, National Parent Teacher Association, and National Education Association. Okay. The American Academy of Pediatrics states that the evidence strongly implies early school start times before 8:30 a.m. as a key modifiable contributor to insufficient sleep in our adolescent population. They also go on to state that a substantial body of research has demonstrated that delaying school start times is an effective countermeasure to chronic sleep loss and has a wide range of potential benefits to students with regard to physical and mental health, safety, and academic achievement. Scientific evidence also tells us that insufficient sleep adversely affects our teens. Further, the AAP recognizes insufficient sleep in adolescents as an important public health issue that significantly affects the health and safety, as well as the academic success of our nation's middle school and high school students, such as poor attendance and increased tardiness, increased depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation, decreased emotional regulation, increased substance use and abuse, increased motor vehicle crashes, increased risk-taking behavior, decreased concentration and cognitive efficiency, and a decline in academic performance. Optimal sleep for middle school and high school students is between 8.5 and 9.5 hours each night. Teens getting less than 8 hours of sleep per night report significantly higher depression symptoms, greater use of caffeine, and are at greater risk for making poor choices for substance use. I'm going to turn it over to our colleague, Dan Wall, Principal of Transit Middle.
Good evening. I'll continue a little bit with a review of the research.
So one of the logical questions in the research and that we received in our review is, if you make school start times later, won't the students just stay up later? And it's a reasonable question. And the research says no. The scientific evidence clearly shows that moving the start time later increases the amount of sleep students get. Multiple studies have shown that for every 2 minutes of school start time is moved back, students gain between 1 and 2 minutes of sleep. So the research suggests a closer alignment between biological circadian rhythms and environmental demands on our students. So it's this closer alignment that helps students access more quality sleep. Coinciding with the benefits of more sleep, multiple studies show that schools with later start times see better overall attendance to school, as well as a marked decrease, as much as 400%, in the number of tardies to first period class. So oversleeping or my child needed to catch up on sleep is a common excuse we see in our attendance offices. Regarding the academic benefits, districts who have moved to later school start times have seen an increase in graduation rates in their high school students. Students with increased sleep report fewer incidents of impaired executive functioning. So this is to say students experiencing more routine sleep can better access their working memory, attend to planning and organization, problem solve, manage their time better, and persevere through challenges. These are many of the skills that parents and educators work to build in their formative years and that we hope to see applied more independently during the high school years. So the last finding we wanted to highlight relates to the economically disadvantaged students. The magnitude of the positive effects of the later school start time on academic outcomes is larger for economically disadvantaged students, including higher course grades, higher achievement on test scores, reduced tardies, improved attendance, and reduced suspensions. I'll turn it over to Mr. Boardman with our recommendation for proposals.
So for the last 2 weeks, I've had people in my building just walk by me and throw times out, seeing if if I'll reveal anything. We want to make sure that everybody at least gets an understanding of what times we chose and why we did. So the proposed start and end times beginning for next year, if that's the choice, really what it comes down to, elementary is going to shift to an earlier slot. So elementary schools, and we've kept we did explore at one point actually moving all 6 elementary schools to the same time, but that wasn't feasible in terms of how we were going to do this. So the 4 elementary schools that currently go at the same time, Dodge, Forest, Heim, and Maple East, their time will be 7:50 a.m. to 2 p.m. The other 2 elementary schools, which have traditionally been different times already, will be 8:20 to 2:30. They're sort of in line in the morning with the middle schools like they are now. The middle schools will be 8:20 to 3 p.m. But if you look at the elementary and the middle schools, they're really kind of moving the start time back about a half hour, and then the end times are a little bit different. And then at high school, we see probably the most significant change. High school would begin at 8:50 a.m. and would end at 3:40 p.m. In addition, one of the things you may notice if you're looking at this, the actual times of the days for the elementary and the high school have changed, and I'll talk about that. But the elementary time of the day is about 10 minutes longer. The high school one is about 10 minutes shorter. Just so people have a sense of what that actually looks like in terms relative to current schedules, what I have here are your current times for these schools and then the proposed new times for these schools. One of the things that I'll talk about too, but one of the things that was important to us was to try to get these schools in line as much as possible, especially in the various levels. You'll actually notice if you're looking at the various different times. I think elementary, we found out there were 3 or 4 different start and end times amongst the schools, even amongst the schools that were actually scheduled at the same time. At the same time, the middle schools were and the high schools were both fairly well aligned, although over the years, randomly, there had been 1 minute added into Heim and 1 minute added into East. In terms of the high school student length of day, I wanted to mention, as I mentioned, it's kind of 10 minutes shorter. So the actual length of day is 10 minutes shorter. It really doesn't result in much of a reduction in the classroom time. Actually, south and north, there'll be no reduction in classroom time. Our periods are 42 minutes as they stand right now. That time will actually be garnered out of extra time that was in a couple of the periods. For instance, at South, we had a longer period. We used to do video homerooms, video announcements in homeroom. So we had a longer first period. So we're able to actually take that time out because we don't do the video announcements anymore. At North, there will be a little bit of a reduction for the same thing in the first period. Plus, they have some passing times that are 5 and some passing times that are 4. At East, the East length of periods is 43 minutes. So at East, it would be 1 minute out of each period in order to accomplish that. Just as a sample, this is sort of a sample bell schedule that we would look to do. The plan is, and I've spoken to the other high school principals, we would like to have our bell schedules all aligned. As it stands right now, they're not. The bell schedules are actually different at all 3 buildings. So what we're hopeful for is that with the bell schedules better aligned, that'll make it easier, certainly for our traveling teachers and also understanding the schedules. One of the things that was interesting with elementary start time, and we've gotten the question before, wouldn't it make sense to push everything back, move things much later? And actually, a lot of the research that is out there, and we talked to quite a few people down in Baltimore at the conference, indicate that there are actually some benefits for elementary students moving earlier. And I've even used Mr. Filipowski as the example. He has young kids. My kids are a little bit older. He has much younger kids. And I said, hey, isn't it fun when they're that young? And at, like 6:15 a.m., they're in your face awake. And that is one of the things you find is that the younger kids tend to be more attentive and they're actually ready for learning earlier in the day. It also allows those schools to maximize schedule opportunities, moving it into an earlier day. They found, the research has shown that there are no negative academic effects for moving elementary students earlier, while there actually are significant academic benefits for moving high school kids later. And actually, one of the other pieces that could be a potential benefit is a decreased need for morning childcare and fewer transitions for students. We wanted to mention, I mentioned the fact that the elementary length of day, we talked about that it would be 10 minutes more. Actually, that wasn't part of our committee's charge, but concurrently at the same time, I know there was a discussion amongst district leadership about adding possible time into that day. And so we are presenting that here as part of it because it does make sense to, if we're going to do this, to kind of put it all together. So concurrently, that was a discussion that was happening, and we were able to bring it into our presentation. One of the things that was very important as we discussed it, and Dr. Brown Hall agreed and was adamant, was and it is a concern that we actually saw in the research that if you move elementary to an earlier time, what you're actually talking about are elementary kids potentially waiting outside earlier. I know at least, for my school, we have bus pickups as early as 6:35. We didn't feel like that was something that we wanted to have for the elementary kids. So one of the pieces, one of those parameters that I talk about as you're going through and you're figuring out the puzzle of school start times and going through there was actually making sure that no elementary students were going to be picked up before 7 a.m. And so that was one of the pieces that we were able to work with our transportation department as we were figuring out all these pieces. So there will not be any pickups for elementary students prior to 7 a.m. 7 a.m. would be the earliest pickup time for an elementary student. Another piece that was mentioned to us, and the committee was very, very adamant that we make sure we explore this too, is what changes this might bring in before and after school care. And obviously, given the change, you're moving elementary earlier. So what does that mean? Probably means you're going to need more after school care as opposed to the morning care, although we still might need some morning care, especially with the 2 schools that are going to go later. So we did actually go through a process. I know Dr. Brown Hall worked with this process too, of calling all the different As some people may know, we actually have buses that do drop off at after-school care programs. We also have Just for Kids in our buildings. So we have spoken to multiple, over a dozen after-school care programs and different programs about whether or not they would be able to accommodate any changes that we were going to make in those situations, with an overwhelming response of absolutely, we're ready to accommodate those things, even so much as we can open up a new room in this place. We have a room that's available for it. But we do know that Just for Kids will also be something that, as we explore, they have indicated a positive response to us for the ability to fill any needs that we have for that, in terms of using Just for Kids in the afternoon. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Muchika for the athletics piece.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. A couple things quickly about athletics. The reason that I was on the panel was to see what times work for us in athletics and intramurals. So as you can see from the first slide, while these programs will obviously start a little bit later, the changes will not affect athletic offerings or extracurricular offerings. There will be limited light outdoor games. I think of things like golf and bowling and ice hockey where we don't control the venues. We've already started conversations with those groups to make sure that we have all the offerings that we have currently for all three schools. A later dismissal, a good positive for this is that we have a lot less unstructured time. For those of you that don't know, a 2:45 dismissal for a team that starts at 4 p.m. because their coach works in the private sector or they work at a middle school. We've had an hour and 15 minutes where we've had to come up with creative ways to have those kids stay out of trouble, so to speak. So it's one thing that we're really looking forward to. And the next slide, athletic busing. Actually, with this proposal, the busing will be better for our students in 7th through 12th grade. The biggest number of ridership is from our elementary schools, followed by middle and then high. This will free up bus runs at 3:45. Currently, the earliest bus we can get for any sport is 4 p.m., which is why most of our start times are 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So this will free up bus times earlier. In addition to that, we've had a lot of requests over the last couple of years since COVID to have sports shuttles at the middle level, which we're looking into. This will allow the kiddos from Casey to go over to Heim, Heim to Casey, Mill on to South, because we will have more buses available. And middle school intramurals, I've already been in talks with our phys ed staff, both middle and elementary school. We will still have the same robust offering of all of our intramurals. We will get creative with the before school schedule and have intramurals after school as well.
One of the questions that came up, and certainly as a high school principal was important to me, was making sure that we still have students who can access the BOCES of the Harkness program that we have. And this is one of the areas where it does become a little bit interesting. And really, it's the morning Harkness program. The morning Harkness program starts at 8 a.m. We did consult. Clarence currently has an 8:52 start time, Clarence High School. So we did ask them, how do you do this? And it will mean that those kids will actually start a little bit earlier. They'll have to be at Harkness at 8 o'clock. We still are responsible for the transportation, making sure that those students have the ability to get there. It will not cancel any programs, though. The students will still have access to those programs. And really, the middle school, the midday run really doesn't have much effect at all. And the end of the day run is something else that we're looking at. It will mean, I know for South and possibly we're looking at it for the other buildings. Whereas right now we actually, the last run, so the end of day Harkness, we call it PM Harkness. When the PM Harkness comes back, that's actually at the end of our school day. That actually wouldn't be true now. They would actually be coming back and there would be a 9th period class after that. So they would have the ability to be in a class at that point. Some of our students in those situations have early release, but they'd have that opportunity to continue to do that. The one thing we wanted to make sure too, and I know that when this was released on board docs today, there were a few questions. I was out of the building on a field trip today and I came back and this was one of the big questions was before school activities. And as we said, while some high schools already have before our school activities, my school definitely, we have multiple things that actually, even with a 7:45 start, we have things starting at 7 a.m. sometimes. And while we already have them, we do want to make sure that we make efforts to honor what we're doing here, which is honoring the fact that, you know, moving school start time later is something that we feel is important because the students are getting more sleep. And so, of course, some of the people who have morning activities already are like, so we can't have any morning activities. That is not what we're saying. In fact, I would guess that we'll probably have a slight increase in morning activities based on the 8:50 start time. Really what we were saying with this was, and it was something that was expressed even by a couple of our teachers and parents, was that if you do this, what we don't want to see is everything that used to be after school gets moved before school, and then you really haven't accomplished anything by doing that. And so when we say efforts will be made to limit those activities, we're going to be monitoring that. We want to make sure that, like I said, we are honoring what we've done here and honoring what the research has told us. And I know that the six of us who went to the conference, obviously when you're immersed in something for several days, you kind of go into that. As we sat there and we listened to the stories of the people talking about these things and talking about the benefits that they've seen and what it does and what you can actually accomplish with those things, we became more and more confident in our need to do this as we were going through. And we want to make sure we honor that and we aren't just simply pushing a problem to the morning. And that brings us to the end of our school start time presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that people have.
Well, first, let me say thank you very much for that thorough presentation. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everyone that is listed on the school start time committee for all of the work and the time that was put into this, all of the questions they asked, because that really pushed the thinking. So that was very important. But I do want to make clear, and Principal Boardman said it in the presentation, the addition of time at the elementary level did not come out of the school start time recommendations. That is a district initiative that we have been looking at. It just happens that during this time, it will fit well in the transportation schedule. So thank you for bringing that up also, Principal Boardman. So are there questions, board members, for the committee that's presenting?
No, Michael was first. If it's whoever you call on, President.
Thanks for the presentation. It was very thorough. I guess I just had a couple questions. Repeatedly, it was said during the presentation, adolescent, middle school, and high schoolers it benefits. Yet I'm seeing the middle school times decrease. They're getting up earlier when in studies do show, and I have researched this, that that's actually the most critical age, especially in terms of behavioral development. And that's a concern of mine. Looking at these times. Hopefully that was researched. I also researched and talked to some people, including some school districts in Canada that have looked at that. Some studies show that a lot of these that have been in these studies, they academically were lower achieving school districts, which it shows a higher gap to achieve this. What we see is academic progress. Not to say that all studies are bad. I do believe in the science. I'm not discerning that, but that would be another concern of mine if I'm thinking out loud, looking at the time changes. Because a lot of the studies look at lower income, lower performing schools where they have that gap, again, like I said, to improve. Those are just a couple areas of concerns. Another area of concern in terms of bus pickup times, I appreciate the 7 o'clock thing or 7 a.m. Pickup, that it won't be before that, but a concern of mine is a safety concern. As you know, some elementary students have to be picked up at corners. Some of these places are cul-de-sacs. They don't have sidewalks, and that's a concern of mine in daylight savings time. It's still dark at 7 a.m. It's a safety concern of mine as I think through this and process it in my head. The only reason I bring up these concerns is I like people to hear as a board member where my thoughts are before decisions are made and voted on. There's always positives and negatives to everything. Those are just some concerns. And I didn't know if maybe some of those things came up in some of your studies, or if you saw some of those or had answers to those concerns that I had, which would help me, better
Sure.
understand
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, all of those things have come up, and I think certainly what you're trying to do is address them as best you can. When we were in Baltimore, one of the things that was provided to us was actually a list. I want to say it was 53 different districts, and so we spent a lot of time examining other districts and what the benefits are. I think overwhelmingly, while you're right in terms of some of the academic achievement pieces, they may have happened. Overwhelmingly, though, the research itself in terms of the health benefits, and I want to say, I mean, the school start time conference that we went to focused quite a bit on that, and really, while the academic achievements, I mean, there were other things in there. For instance, one of the things that they talked about down there that we didn't include in ours was, one of the districts had actually seen. They did a 2-year examination of sports and athletic injuries and found that when they changed it, they saw a reduction in that. Whether or not that's actually, a cause and effect, that's tough for us to say. They certainly believe that. I think one of the things that we really focused on was the health and mental health benefits. And it does say adolescent. What was very clear down there, though, was it's a sliding scale. Just like elementary can move earlier, you certainly want to have middle schools especially as you're looking at it, as late as possible. What's interesting about Williamsville is our middle schools are 5 through 8. So you're really actually seeing an elementary and a middle school level, in terms of other places. And so we have that sort of split piece for that. But what the research is pretty clear on is that the kids who benefit the most from late school start times are the high school. And in high school, they were talking about traditional 9 through 12 high school. That's where the research is focused on. The 5 through 8, you're right, especially the 7 and 8 kids would benefit from it. One of the things that we actually did as we first started this, and this is where logistics gets into some of those pieces, is we really looked at 8:30, and I think you saw that in the slide that Christine Harding presented. We looked at 8:30, which is what most of the research will talk about as the time we want to get our high school and middle school kids as close to as possible. And really, that's where we kind of started. In fact, I think our first sort of thing as we were playing with things was an 8:30 to 3:30 8:30 to 3:30 for the high schools. Then you start getting into, well, okay, how long do you need between bus runs, and what does this look like? Well, if we start high school at 8:30 and it's 30 minutes between bus runs, that's now elementary starting at 7:30. That doesn't seem doable. So now you start looking at figuring those things out. And so, yeah, we tried to get the middle school as close to that 8:30 mark as possible.
Can I bring up 2 things, if I may? So I also want to stress, because we know that what we've seen over the many years is a increased need for mental health supports in our school buildings. And the research was clear that the movement of times really helps with mental health supports for students. I also want to talk, because I appreciate what Mr. Biscaglia said. That's why we were so adamant that no student will be picked up before 7 a.m. We are also, what we failed to mention, implementing a transportation efficiency study. So what we haven't done in the past was send notice to families to see who really needs transportation. What we do is we develop bus routes for all of our students. And many times that's inefficient. That's why we have high school buses arriving to high school so early, because we've routed a bus for 75 students in 12 ride, right? And so it leaves a lot of inefficient time. So with us surveying our parents, and we will be doing that in April and May, of who really needs transportation, it allows us to make more efficient bus routes. So it will reduce the amount of time we need in the morning. But right now, saying that no student will be picked up earlier than 7 o'clock helps us. That may eventually be 7:10, 7:15, depending on how many students really need transportation. When you drive by any of our schools in the morning or at dismissal, you see the line of cars that are lined up, dropping off and picking up kids. We need to understand what that looks like and how it will affect the transportation need of our district, because that will also affect those morning times, probably pushing the elementary pickup times to later. So thank you for that point.
If I can, I just want to acknowledge the board member's comment about and agree with there is a disproportionate impact on economically disadvantaged students. So those studies will definitely show that. Conversely, making these changes, those impacts increase those proportionally more. The magnitude of change for those students is significantly more. One of the key studies that we learned about in Baltimore, Cherry Creek School District in Colorado. It's a good one. I worked in it in the early 2000s. It's very similar to Williamsville, although it's 50,000 students, but demographic wise, it's one of the top performing suburban school districts in Denver. They were one of the case studies that we were learning about while we were in Baltimore. And it's a good example of kind of maintaining the high standards of a high quality, high performing school district while also making certain adjustments to also support all the students throughout the district.
Thank you. Principal Manna? I mean, Board Member Manna. I'll take the promotion. Thank you. Excellent work. I expect nothing less out of this district and the stakeholders that attended the meetings and had the input. And, what I'm struggling with is the feedback, or pushback from families who are saying, I need my high school aged child to be home early for the middle school and elementary school child. I can't, it's too much it's too cumbersome to send my elementary or middle school to daycare for the hour and a half. Because right now the elementaries are, 2:10, 2:15 release, and maybe they'd be home for a half an hour before the high schoolers come home. Now it's an hour and 40 minutes. Quite a difference having an elementary student home waiting until the high school sibling comes home. And I would say that's probably the number one concern or complaint I'm getting, that you're really going to mess up my daycare situation. And I don't know if I have a question yet, but it seems to me that I have to wrestle with, how are we giving a positive impact to the 3 high schools, and what is the negative impact to the 10 other schools and the families who have children in those schools? So maybe my question is, what feedback did you get, or what experience did you hear about from either the conference or I think Cherry Creek you mentioned? Can you tell me? Because the science is irrefutable, basically.
Yeah.
No one here is going to say those. I mean, I am not going to say that those studies were fake or skewed. It's, how does this house of cards work for every family in this district? So my question would be, what was the feedback or information you received?
Yeah, and we've had those conversations also. And right now, there's actually some of the elementary schools get home before the high schools currently. And you're right, it would be, it would be a longer time there. And I think one of the things that is one of the things that we looked at. It's one of the reasons certainly why we were looking at after school care and what that could look like and what the need for that would be. I think the most difficult piece of that is, and it goes along with one of the things I had some of my teachers say, well, why didn't you take a poll and ask people what they wanted? And my response was, well, because if you take a poll and you ask people what they want, it's not based on that research. It's based on, well, what is my situation here? And I get that, and I think that's one of the things that's difficult. It's one of the things that anybody who's having a change is going to have to going to struggle with. I think, for us, one of the reasons why we really wanted to reach out to those after school care programs and look at those and make sure that those things were there is because it isn't acknowledging, hey, is there something there? It's acknowledging the fact that there will probably be changes for some people. I can tell you, I've had teachers who have known that that high school was probably going to go later, who looked at me and were like, "That's great. That fits my life perfectly." And we'll have families like that. And I have teachers who are like, "Ooh, my situation is going to be different. I'm going to have to figure that out." And I think that is the difficult piece of it as you're going through. And I wouldn't characterize it as the high schools are benefiting and the other 10 aren't. I actually think that there's a lot of benefits for all of the levels. Certainly, you do know that the research shows in terms of the high school kids, they're benefiting. I think when you're looking at the overall picture, but anytime you're making a change like this, you're going to be looking at, depending on your own situation, what does that look like? And that was why even with our committee when we started, I can tell you absolute certain there was a member on the committee who looked at me before all this and said, I don't want to change anything. And that's why we asked everybody to really look carefully at the research and what is best for students. We're talking about almost 10,000 students and what is going to be best for those students as they're doing it. And it's why a lot of those pieces that we put in there came from questions that we all had as we worked through the work on the committee, saying like, well, what about this? This could be a problem. One of the things we tried to do was examine as many problems as we could find, and how could we ensure that those problems weren't as big a problem as we possibly could.
I would just add that there's going to be pluses and minuses to either way we look at that problem. For some, I know some families and parents approached me and said, great, now I can get to work on time a little bit more earlier in the morning, and my older child can get my kid on the bus. Not that we're recommending our high school students are up at 6 a.m. getting their kids on the bus, because that defeats the purpose of them sleeping. However, there is an element of some of our families too acknowledging the fact they're looking forward to getting to work, and it's shifting their daycare needs primarily to the afternoon. It's not going away, but there is definitely going to be some shifting for some families.
Thank you.
I just have another comment that I have heard, and I'm just wondering if this was brought up or anybody thought about it too. A lot of kids have mentioned they have after school jobs, and they're very worried now. How are they going to get there at 4 o'clock, or how are they going to fit athletics and this, or clubs and this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we looked at that a lot, and one of the conversations I had, even with a group of my students, when they were talking about it, and I think some of this is it becomes perspective, right? I had a group of students who said, well, no jobs start later than 3:30, and I said, well, that's an interesting one, because Clarence doesn't end until 3:30 right now. So do none of the kids in Clarence have jobs? Is that what we think? There will be some adjustment for that. Now, I will say for the high schools, we still would have early release, which all three high schools have. So there still would be that ability for students, even though the day may end now at 3:40. You would actually have, for students, you would have the ability for them to leave early. I fully expect, and I've even talked about it to my counselors who are seeing that there's been an increase in seniors asking for not having ninth period classes. That's not a surprise to me at all. Even now, currently, with a 2:45 end, that tends to be one of the things. We have more students right now who ask for early release than ask for late arrival at South High School. I don't know what North and East is, but at South that's true. So I certainly would. I think that probably will be something. But again, I sometimes go back to there will be adjustments being made, but I know that kids from Clarence are working. And their day is going to end about the same time as ours. And so it can be done, but certainly part of that is making sure that the community is aware of what's happening and what this looks like also.
And just one more question about athletics. This has come up too, is that right now, I can only speak for North. I don't know about the other schools, but there's a huge struggle to get time. There's so many people that need to practice, and there has to be some creative. So now what happens?
Yeah, that creativity piece. And I'll go back and say I wasn't invited to Baltimore, and I don't hold it against this group, but I was not at the conference in Baltimore. But we will have to get creative. We will. Middle schools will have to become more available to us, and we've talked with some of the principals about that. We do expect to use our grass again out front at North, for example. The winter will be a challenge, but it's a challenge that we're willing to take if the research and the committee and the people, if this is something that they do want. But it will be a challenge for sure.
Sorry, one more question. And now, are there different people, I don't know, like different outside sports teams that rent space or lease space?
Sure.
So what happens with that? Then they just won't be able to?
No, we're going to lease space probably a little bit later, like our bowling groups, our hockey groups. We have hockey practices anywhere from 3 o'clock now, which will become 4:15. We have games at 6 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. We'll still do that. Bowling, we have 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock rentals. Golf courses, we're in a fight time, yes, but we'll work with the golf courses on that, venues that we can't control. But yes,
Do you mean outside groups renting our spaces? So during the school year, outside group rental is pretty limited because quite honestly, we use our during the school year,
Right.
we use our time. So it's really rare for outside groups to do it. We do have some in the winter in particular with some gyms and things like that. And so you may see a little bit of that. I think, and even we've actually spoken, one of the things that we've been looking at is, so for instance, South is one of the schools when I think of late fall, early spring, South is one of the schools that I think could be more adversely affected than possibly North or East. North or East actually have lighted fields that are larger as opposed to South, which has the singular field. So one of the things we've already begun talking about, I spoke to Chris about it. I was speaking with Adam Erickson when he was here, was are there other avenues for us if we need them? ECC's in the process of potentially, building a field. That's an option for us. Damon is in the process of building lighted turf fields. That would be an option. I don't know how much we would need to, and that is part of this process. Is some of this will be us discovering that as we go through. What does it look like in terms of sharing space? Are we going to have to be more economical with that? I think we probably are, and I think those are things that you will probably look at. But it was interesting because one of the things we were very concerned about initially when you talk about sports was, well, now buses are going to have to leave that much later. I think we were all looking at it as it's 2:45. We get out right now. It's 4 o'clock. If we get out at 3:40, now we're looking at 5 o'clock before buses can leave. And we actually think it's possible that buses will leave earlier now for away matches than they currently do, even though the school day is 55 minutes later.
Dr. Singh?
I just want to thank the committee for all the hard work and research. In your conference meetings, was there any question of how the students adapted to the new time change? And how much time did it take in case where you had improvement in mental health and improvement in grades? Did it happen first year, second year after the time change, or was there any discussion on that?
So it wasn't discussion. So some of the research, most of the studies were done fairly quickly after the changes were made. And then there were some longer term ones. Certainly, one of the things that was apparent was when you make the change, the sleep begins to change almost automatically because of the way that it actually works. So I think Dan mentioned it in his slide. For every 2 minutes you adjust the time, they tend to gain about 1 to 2 minutes. They actually said it's closer to 1.5 to 2 minutes of time that you're going to gain in terms of sleep. So those sleep factors are going to you're going to see those on a sort of automatic basis. There really wasn't anything that talked about the time frame in terms of academics, but a lot of the discussions in terms of the benefits, in terms of mental health and other things, really went along with the academic results. So I would assume, without seeing that actual piece, that you're seeing some immediate reactions for those things.
And we are setting up time for some of our students to visit Alden High School because they did that move a couple of years ago, just so that our students can have conversations with those students. And we're also setting up time for some of our students to meet with students at Clarence to get some of their student questions answered about jobs, about extracurriculars, because Clarence starts a little bit later than even our proposal.
Go ahead. No, I went first.
Mr. Bueller?
I just have two things. As a person who just went through this in the place I work in, I was against it there, and I almost don't notice it anymore. And I'm also a golf coach where I work. In the 5 years the few years we've done CFJ, I've never lost a match because of darkness, and we do travel. I guess my question is there any research that goes against what you're saying? Did you find any credible research that said, no, you're doing the wrong thing by moving times back?
Not as it relates to the medical field, which is a lot of what our conference was about. So physiologically, talking about what students need when it talks about sleep deprivation and what students need with their circadian rhythms as they move into adolescence, the science is pretty clear. Logistics, there's things that school districts have to manage and deal with. So the only negatives have more been case study stories about school districts' inability to maybe attend to some of the logistics, transportation, daycare, things that, you know, are unique to their environment or their, you know, locality.
I just love that. I'm sorry. Do we have any idea what percentage of our students have jobs after school? Is it like, are we talking, I was talking about with another board member earlier. Is it 3%? Is it 28%? Like, do we have any idea?
We don't.
I don't. I would say this. I don't believe it's 3%. It's higher than that.
I'm just curious, like, that's a concern that parent, I mean, my phone's been popping off throughout this meeting, and that's one of the concerns I seem to be getting, like, but how many kids are we talking about? Like, that's, you know, a legitimate question.
I think a lot.
I'm sure.
I don't know.
Sorry. But I'm sure employers will adapt, right? The need for employees is out there. They're not going to say no because you can't be here 15 minutes earlier. I don't need you. We're being very flexible in district with how we hire, right? So I think it goes back to what Principal Boardman said earlier. This is a change. And one of my colleagues said it best yesterday. We were in another meeting. Change is never easy, but we learn how to do hard better, right? So it's about making sure the community knows what we're doing and they will also help us adapt. Because there are other districts looking at us statewide, you know, just like very similar. We looked at Olean, we looked at Alden, we looked at districts that have made this change and how they went about it. We looked at districts outside of the state, and people will also be looking at us about how we do it.
Yeah, and I think having spoken to high school kids, having high school kids of my own, I think employers are already flexible. I know when both of my sons, when they would play in their sports seasons, they wouldn't work. And then when their sports season ended, they'd go back to work. And so I know there is flexibility. Certainly this would be a change for them though.
Board member Biscaglia.
I'll be a principal. Can I take this too? With my comments before, I do want to say I agree with what Mr. Manna said, and I understand the studies, and I don't want to, you guys did a fabulous job. I don't want to take that away with my concerns of what I brought up. I just try to think out loud of all concerns that, many people have. And as we were discussing this, I came up with two other questions. One is, it affect the budget with transportation?
It does.
That's that.
Yep, it will.
Just to follow up, when just to clarify too, when you talk about the opportunity for those shuttle buses, I want to make clear that's just we're not guaranteeing it's going to happen.
Correct.
That was good.
That's
my second one, so thanks.
But absolutely. But when we spoke with transportation, it is more likely because we will have the ability, because the middle schools ending early, and many of the middle school buses, for example, that service Mill also service South, right?
Question of cost.
It's a question of the timing and the cost, but it looks like it's more in line with what we need to have happen to be able to have those shuttle buses. And as far as cost, I know that Mr. Kelly gave us preliminary estimates of around $650,000, realizing that 64% of that is reimbursable transportation aid. But that's why the efficiency surveys that we send out are so important, because if we reduce our ridership, and we know that, we can reduce our bus routes also, because this will add some bus routes, but we're able to reduce those when we realize how many students are on the bus. If we route 75 to 90 students and only 12 are riding, there's opportunity there for sure.
Yeah, and again, that's another, just talking about how the Rockefeller Center or study and all that. That's a fear of mine. What's going to change with foundation, and another a concern. I won't say it's not a lot of things came up. Problems would have been with districts that have logistic issues, and then years later they find out that A, B, and C is happening. I guess I'm not saying this change is bad or doesn't need to happen. It just seems like it's happening very, very quick, not thinking of every single logistic thing. Small little fears of mine. That's all I'll just say.
And I share the story of
nothing
one
to do with the studies either. I don't want to.
It's funny because one of my buddies at the gym came up to me. He's a parent at Williamsville East, and he said, "My son tells me you guys are thinking about changing the studies." I'm like, where have you been the last year and a half? Because this is something that we've been discussing for a year and a half. So I don't want anyone to think that this is something we're rushing into. We haven't provided enough time to study it and explore all of the logistics about it. But we do realize also that no matter how much planning, how much study you do, a lot of logistics are answered once you get into the process. And we have to reserve time for that. And we have to reserve ourselves to understand that that may happen also. And so I just ask, board members and the public to understand that.
I agree. And I ask those things for responses like that. And I think
Absolutely.
it's good to think that way. And just, as Mr. Manna said, in terms, I did have one individual come up. They were in tears talking to my wife at Wegmans. And I think as we grow in diversity in the district, in general, there are tiers where I can't afford childcare anyways. I don't know what I'll do if this happens. And I'm a teacher. I want to see every kid be successful and academics to grow. I totally agree with that. I get it. It's just, that's where I struggle. And I want to say because I'm an individual board member. That's where I struggle when you have that as we're changing, it's hard. It's a hard decision because you guys are 100% accurate there's plenty of positives. There are great things that can, are the outcomes, but then you get those small little stories and negatives and you kind of makes you pull back just a little. You know what I mean?
Right. No, and I completely understand that. I completely get it because, even during the time when I was finishing my dissertation at UB, one of the questions kept coming up, and I know board members have mentioned it before also. When we know what's in the best interest of students, when we know when studies are done and there's clear evidence what will benefit students, why does it take so long for K-12 to adopt or adapt when we know what's in the best interest of kids? And so we have to start to understand that. I know our board has been very strong with supporting what's in the best interest of kids. Look at our class size initiatives, right? Our board many years ago adopted class size guidelines, and there's definitely not as much research supporting that as there is supporting this. And we were the leader in that, right? So we understand that we have to sometimes make sure we keep the focus on what's in the best interest of kids, according to the research, according to what we know is in the best interest of kids. And I appreciate all the questions, and there'll always be questions, there'll always be anecdotes, but we have to eventually look at, this is the research, this is what we know is in the best interest of kids. Are we ready to make that commitment for our students?
Yeah, and I will say right after the Channel 7 story, I think it was, or the Buffalo News, they came out about the same time, whenever they were I must have been October. I spoke to a district administrator from another district, and the comment that was sort of made was, look, we all know this research is there and we all know it's better for kids, but it's a lot easier not to do this. It strikes me that it is. I sort of joked with people. I'm like, I have 4.5 years till I'm eligible to retire. It's a lot easier for me not to do this and just ride off. I don't know if that's what's right though, and I think anybody who really looks at that research knows, geez, this is the right thing to do. But what is difficult is when you have 13 buildings and you have however many employees, 2,000, 3,000 employees, and 10,000 kids and all those families. Yes, this is going to, I sort of joke, it's like a lot of decisions we make at the building level, where we do something and it's the curve. You're going to have 20% of the people who absolutely hated that decision, 20% of the people who absolutely loved that decision, and the 60% in the middle could sway either way. And I think that is true. There's no doubt that this is a difficult decision.
I just wanted to highlight one point about the research. Just looking at all of our research articles, these date back to 2014, 2017. So although we've been exploring this for the past year and a half, this research is old, right? We are catching up now to that research, to that information that existed for all these years. So I just wanted to highlight that point.
Thank you. Vice President Poulin?
Yeah, I haven't wanted to comment because I did have the opportunity to go to Baltimore and get immersed in the soup, as they say. But I know as a board member, this is my 4th year on the board. This is the first year because we were taking action that I haven't gotten emails from students and families saying, when is the school district going to look at doing things to make this more, change the start time of school? It's too early. So that's been on my mind for the years that I have been on the board. We've heard it at community forums when we've had parents speak to us about that. And I am an educator at heart. I've been in education for a long time and have been hearing about this. My grandson who graduated last year and his friend said, why didn't you do this when we were in school? I said, it takes time. It takes time. But I'm also thinking about our community, and we are asking some hard changes for people. And I look at the community also and think, for a third of the people in our community, it's not going to be a change, because our middle schoolers who are moving into high school, they're going to be virtually starting at the same time that they have been. So that's not new to them. For our fourth graders who are moving into our middle school, they're going to be starting at virtually the same time. And for our kindergartners who are coming in, it's all new. So we have some newness there to build on as well. I'm very hopeful, and I'm anxious to hear from the community their concerns so that we can address them and hopefully do what's best for our kids. I also, early on in my career here as a board member, we started hearing so much about student mental health. And I raised the question, what is it we are doing as a school district to create a situation that is causing mental health problems for our students? And one of those things is the time that we start high school. So I'm glad that we have come to this point, and hope we can work through the logistics that we need to make this a good situation for all of our students.
And I think it's fair to say that although we've kind of lived this the last year and a half, we're glad that you guys have to make the decision.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of your work, and thank you for your phenomenal presentation and answering the questions tonight. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So much.
Board President, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. We are now on item 7A. The board goals mid-year progress report is in board docs. Board members, are there any questions or comments regarding our goals? No. Okay. 7B, our policy committee will meet on January 28th. On December 19th, board members visited the new Maple West temporary classrooms that are now in use. Other events and building visits are listed in board docs. And are there any board member comments or questions regarding any events, meetings, or building visits? Okay. 7C, Vice President Poulin, will you please provide an update regarding the student board member?
Yes, the student board member committee did meet via Google Meet this afternoon. We looked at the 3 proposals that had been presented by all 3 high schools, and we did come to a consensus and vote on the process that will be utilized. I will have a finalized document for the board at the February 11th meeting, which will be finalized. But the overall process does mirror the process that is used for the selection and election of board members who are duly elected members of this board. They are going to be utilizing a short form application and asking the students to obtain petition signatures of 4% of the high school population, which will include at least 2 staff members. That will be followed by a interview process. All of those students who have completed that process will be interviewed by a committee appointed by the school building administrator, which will include an administrator, 2 teachers, and 2 students. That process will identify 3 potential candidates who will be then elected from the general population of the student body. Oh, student and teacher body. The teachers will be asked to vote as well. So.
Awesome. I have a question.
Wonderful. Mr. Manna?
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you've done. So, I read through the three proposals. So
Yes.
if I could get a sneak preview of the answer, I'd appreciate it. So I saw a couple of them had a grade, a GPA attached to it. You had to have a 75 in one school, one was 85. Is that going to be your final recommendation?
No, it's not a part of not a part of the process identifiable there. So that's not a requirement for.
Because the law says you got to be there 1 year.
Yeah, the law says you have to be there 1 year.
GPA.
Exactly. Yep.
How would the election be conducted?
It's going to be an all-school election, so they will utilize the processes that they have available, whether that's through WITS or a student ballot. They will, or that will have to be managed in each school.
Okay. Was there an attendance? One of the schools said you have to have like a 95% attendance.
That was a potential criteria to apply, but no, that we did not include any of those.
Why is teachers voting?
Because it came up in the conversation today that the person who was on the board would not just necessarily represent the students, but that they would be conduits to the whole school community. So that was that is what is going to be coming to the board.
The recommendation.
That's the recommendation.
I find it interesting that the teachers get a voice in that too.
Well, they get 2 votes then.
Yeah.
If they live in the district.
Well, they get to vote for a student. They get to vote for.
Right. The students can't vote for us, but the teachers can't vote for.
Yeah.
Students can vote for us, but the students vote for themselves, and the teachers can vote for the students, even if they don't live in the district.
But students can't vote.
Right, but teachers who don't live in the district, even though they teach in the district, can vote for the students, but they can't vote for the board. Right? If you're a teacher.
No, right. No, what I was saying, but
I wasn't making a big deal out of it.
No. I'm just saying I was following your train of thought because then I said, then
lots of luck.
Right. All right. My thoughts exactly. But then the students are non-voting members. It was just circular in nature. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah, they're non-voting members.
They're not voting members.
Thank you for that.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have a lot to mull over and to decide at our February meeting. So,
a lot of questions.
Yes, that's amazing. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Items 7D and 7E, ECASB and NISBA items are in board docs. 7F, board members, please remember to check your upcoming liaison assignments and try to secure a substitute if you are unable to attend. 7G, this past month, we received correspondence regarding school start times, prayer breaks, classroom temperatures, and a bus concern. Are there any questions or comments regarding items 7D through 7G? We already asked some, so I don't see any more. We're moving on to consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve agenda items 9 minutes, 10 personnel, 11 business and finance, 12 exceptional education student needs and student activities, and 13 district facilities and support services as presented. Mr. Bulin, Ms. Fletch, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. At this time, I would like to thank the following individuals retiring on July 1st for their service to the district. Whitney Abbott, school counselor, Transit Middle School with 30 years of service. Norma Jacobs, teacher, Mill Middle School with 33 years of service. Diane Keefe, teacher, Transit Middle School with 19 years of service. Jean Valley, teacher, Forest Elementary School with 29 years of service. Lynn Badanza, teacher, Dodge Elementary School with 18 years of service. And I would also like to thank the following retiree for their service to the district: Denise Grazer, food service helper, Maple West Elementary School with 6 years of service. Thanks to all. Okay. All right, stuck here. 14A, may I have a motion to take from the table for the second reading of policy updates 5410, 5411, 5574, 7121, 7130, 7241, 7313, 7472, 7551, 7554, and 7555 as presented. Ms. Poulin, Mr. Bulin, is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. May I have a motion for the second reading and adoption of these same policies? Mr. Bulin, Dr. Spicer, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. 14B, may I have a motion for the first reading of policy updates 7510, 7512, 7521, 7522 as presented? Ms. Bleckinger, Mr. Manna, is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. However, Mr. Bulin has left the table. May I have a motion to table these policies for the second reading and adoption at the February meeting? Dr. Spicer, Mr. Manna, is there any discussion? All in favor? Again, motion carries unanimously 8-0-0. Items 15 and 16, there are no matters to discuss under instruction or legislative matters. Item 17, are there any matters to discuss under committee of the whole? Seeing none, we're moving on to 18A.
There is one.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Dr. Singh.
I just had a question on the committee as a whole.
Yes.
The governor announced universal free meal for all students for schools. Would this come under the governor's budget or something under the foundation aid thing?
It's the governor's proposal. It's not been adopted yet. And it would come up, my understanding, it would come out of the
budget.
The state budget.
Correct.
Yes.
Let's not forget she's in an election year, so she could just be saying anything.
Wait, was that for lunches? And
Great. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
It'll be phenomenal.
I just can't bank on that right now.
Phenomenal.
I mean, no one announced the cost.
That's right. Yeah.
On an election year.
All right. Any other matters under committee of the whole? Okay, we'll move on to 18A, second public expression. If anyone in the audience would like to speak at this time, please step up to the podium. I do not see anyone, so we're moving on to item 19. Our next regular board meeting and budget work session is February 11th. May I have a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting? Ms. Fletch, Ms. Poulin, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.